So far in talking about this patient ed events or pat ed events repo that I've been working on testing, we've covered unit tests, which my definition is basically a unit test is testing one little element of a file in abstraction from any framework the file may exist in eventually. To run a unit test, you need PHP unit and the file under test, and that really should be all. We've seen acceptance testing, which is full-blown automated browser manipulation and clicking on things and testing that the result in JavaScript is returned from the application in the way that we think it should be. To do the acceptance testing, you have to have the application or website running on a web server. You have to have Selenium server up and running to control your browser or browsers. You can actually add on more browsers if you want, not only Chrome but Firefox perhaps, i.e. Edge, I believe. But there are also API testing. API testing is very much like acceptance testing. You have to have it running on a web server. You don't need Selenium because you're not actually going to drive a browser. You're just going to run an instance, more or less, of curl, which accesses the website on your server and retrieves API calls, and then usually just tests those for a particular response, or the content should match a particular JSON format. I don't see anything in JSON in here, but you get the idea. What's in between? Well, functional testing. What is a functional test? Well, functional testing is very much like our series has been talking about feature testing. It involves working with some elements of the framework that are involved in methods that you want to test, and making sure that even with those elements of the framework involved, you get expected results. Codeception has a Laravel 5 module that allows you to set a particular .env file for your testing, determine whether or not to run database migrations. I find this useful because what I've done is I've created a new database that's empty and will stay empty, but I connect to that instead of my normal database in .env, and that gives me the ability to run my database migrations and populate that database with the information that I need for the test. So here's our test, and the particular piece that I'm working on testing so far we've seen the unit test for setting the trackables. This gets a little complex. I won't go into that just yet. So let's look at count event sense for n. The purpose of this is if it's given an event ID and a start date and a queue of users, which is actually just an array of user IDs, it should count the number of occurrences of that event after that start for the user IDs in that array and return the count. In order to test this, we'll do this, which gives us one event. I'm using the factory method from our series. I've set up a database factory here to build the information, and I'm just replacing the elements that I want to replace. Also, out of the box, if you just set up functional testing, you won't have access to these asserts, but you can add them. And you add them here, and once you've changed something like that, you'll need to run set build to bring in your new module. But now I've got access to the asserts, which are the same asserts that I have access to in my unit tests. So instead of just being able to iVisit page or ICResult, I can also assert that I'm getting an expected result, because previously my only option here was I could take a look at the result, but then I'm dropping all of my other tests. I'm hoping my result is not actually 3, which it should not be. But let's find out. Okay, so my result is not 3. Oh, there are 3 tests. So I wasn't actually getting the die and dump that I thought I was. But nonetheless, if we add the asserts module, not only can we do some of the standard stuff like I visit page or I see in result, we can also do I assert equals. So having put one event into my database, I then look to see if I can get, for that trackable ID, in the last 30 days, with a queue that contains the user on that event, can I actually get 1? And I do. Furthermore, and I ran through this once before, so I was going to build these as I talked, but now they're already here and I didn't want to delete them. But here's the second test, which is 4 user events with, well, those are 1, 2, 3 different users, still using event 77. So that's my ID, and one in the last 30 days. My queue is the 3 users that I've entered, and I should get a 4. And as a matter of fact, as you can see, I do. Now this last test I put in, and I had to do a little research to figure out exactly how to make it work the way I wanted to. But this is by way of explaining, okay, so we're accessing the DB in here, and that's all fine and good, and we know how that works, and we know that we can put records in and we can pull records out. But why else might you want to do a functional test? And how else might you carry out a functional test? Well, let's say that we had another function in this class, and this particular function made some use of something that was injected into the inversion of control container, like the API user from Spear Microservices. How can we control the results here? Well, the way we do that is mocking, and mocking is fairly easy in the Laravel 5 module for Codeception. The first thing I'm going to do is, since I'm pulling the microservices API user model out of the container, if I do this exactly this way without making any changes, I'm going to get the real API user, and well, since I haven't logged in, it's going to be completely empty. But I don't want it to be empty because I need to make some settings in it and test the results. So I'm going to use getApplication, which is a function from the Laravel 5 module, and that gives me my app, and this is the Laravel app. And so once I have the Laravel app, I can bind something into the container by the name I'm going to use, and my bind is very much like a service provider, so I'm going to return a new instance of a test class. So when app this item is requested from the container, instead of returning the API user model, it's actually going to return now my test class. I'm going to add my test class right here in the test that I'm doing, and my one function on it is a get claim function. It's going to return nope. Then I can assert equals that repo test thing, which makes use of app, that binding. When I call get claim on my returned object, that's actually going to call get claim here instead of trying to call get claim in API user, and this is going to return nope. We can essentially see that work like this. So I'm going to bind it, I'm going to make it, I'm going to call get claim on it. That takes us to our test class. It returns nope. And if I continue from there, you'll see that I am all green. So there's a good general introduction to functional tests, their differences from unit tests, handling mocking, what you can do to test the functionality of things that involve framework elements like facades or other pieces in the framework. And I guess that's it. Thanks for watching.